The way no one sees life looked fine from the outside. That's what made it confusing. Every morning, Mara woke up before the alarm. Not because she was eager for the day, but because her mind never truly rested. Even in sleep, her thoughts stayed busy, rehearsing responsibilities, replaying conversations, calculating what still needed to be done. She lived in a quiet apartment in a growing city, not too loud, not too lonely, the kind of place people moved to when they were trying to get their life together. From her balcony, she could see traffic starting to build, people already rushing somewhere important. She often wondered where everyone was rushing to. At 32, Mara had what people called a good life. A stable jobby, a respected name at work, bills paid on time, a smile that showed up when required. But inside, something felt heavy. Not dramatic, not tragic, just heavy. Most days followed the same rhythm. She showered, got dressed, made coffee she barely tasted. She sat in traffic, listened to the radio, nodded at familiar songs without really hearing them. At work, she performed well, efficient, reliable, dependable, the one people leaned on when things fell apart. "You're so strong," they often said. "You always have it together." Mara smiled when they said that, but strength, she had learned, could become a prison. It wasn't that something terrible had happened, no big heartbreak, no devastating loss, no scandal or failure. And yet, she felt tired in a way sleep didn't fix. Saw me evenings after work. She'd sit on her couch, fully dressed, bag still on her shoulder, staring at nothing. Minutes passed, sometimes an hour. She wouldn't cry, she wouldn't pray, she wouldn't scroll. She just sat, as if her soul needed time to catch up with her body. One Thursday evening, she stood in front of her bathroom mirror longer than usual. She looked fine. Clear skin, neatly done hair, a body that still carried grace, but her eyes looked distant, like someone waiting for something they couldn't name. "What's wrong with you?" she whispered. The mirror, of course, gave no answer. Mara had learned early how to be responsible. She was the kind of girl who didn't complain, who adjusted, who adapted, who told herself others have it worse. So she buried questions like, "Why do I feel behind? Is this all there is? Why does life feel like one long to-do list?" She told herself this was adulthood, that everyone felt like this. That piece would come later, after the next milestone. But later kept moving. Later came and went, quietly. On Sundays, she went to church. She sat in the same seat, sang the songs, lifted her hands when everyone else did, listened carefully to sermons about faith, purpose, and joy. People around her cried. Some smiled through tears. Others wrote notes with intensity. Mara just listened. Not disconnected, just tired. She believed in God truly, but lately her prayers felt small, short, careful, safe. "Thank you for today. Please help me this week. Watch over my family." She stopped asking big questions, stopped expecting answers. That night, as she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, a thought surfaced, quiet but heavy. Is something wrong with me for feeling this way? She had done everything right, so why did life still feel unfinished? Outside, the city hummed. Inside, Mara turned onto her side, hugging her pillow close. She didn't know it yet, but this quiet dissatisfaction, this unnamed weight, was not a sign of failure. It was the beginning of an awakening. Because sometimes, before God changes your life, He first allows you to feel the truth about it. 2 weeks later, nothing had changed. And somehow, that was the problem. Mara's days kept moving forward like clockwork, predictable, productive, polished. If someone had paused her life from the outside, they would have seen success, stability, normalcy. Inside, though, the heaviness had started to hum low, constant, impossible to ignore. It followed her everywhere. Monday morning meetings, Tuesday deadlines, midweek check-ins, Friday exhaustion. She answered emails before they even felt urgent. She anticipated problems before they appeared. She carried responsibilities like second skin. At work, Her manager praised her consistency. "You're reliable, Mara. We can always count on you." She nodded, grateful and strangely burdened, because being counted on left no room to fall apart. That Thursday, during lunch, her colleagues gathered around a small table by the window. Conversation drifted effortlessly: weekend plans, weddings, babies, investments, promotions. "I'm thinking of moving to a bigger place," one said. "We're saving for our second child," another added. "I finally feel like life is coming together." Mara smiled and nodded at the right moments, when someone turned to her and asked, "And you, Mara, what's next for you?" The question landed heavier than expected. She opened her mouth, then closed it. "I don't know yet," she said lightly. "Just taking life as it comes." They laughed politely and moved on, but something inside her tightened. Later that evening, she stood in line at the grocery store, staring at shelves full of options she didn't really want. She picked the same items she always did, safe choices, familiar patterns. As she waited, she watched a woman ahead of her, juggling groceries and a crying toddler. The child tugged at her arm, desperate for attention. The woman sighed, not angry, just tired. Mara felt a lump form in her throat, not because she wanted that life, but because she recognized the weariness. Different lives, same weight. At home, she dropped her keys on the counter and leaned against the door. "I'm fine," she said out loud. The words sounded hollow in the quiet room. She said them again, louder this time. "I'm fine." But her body didn't believe her. That night, she scrolled through her phone longer than usual. Photos of smiling couples, perfect vacations, achievement announcements, before and after stories of people who had figured it out. She told herself she was happy for them. And she was, but comparison crept in, subtle, poisonous. "Am I doing something wrong? Did I miss a step? Why does everyone else seem to arrive while I'm still on the road?" She locked her phone and turned it face down. Her chest felt tight. The following Sunday, church felt louder than usual. The music swelled. People sang with passion. Hands lifted. Tears flowed. Mara stood, then sat. She listened as the pastor spoke about trusting God's timing. "Sometimes," he said, "we mistake waiting for wasting. But God does some of his deepest work in seasons that look quiet." Mara's breath caught. She wanted to believe that, but waiting felt less like holy preparation and more like being stuck. That afternoon, she visited her mother. They sat at the kitchen table, sunlight streaming through the window. Her mother watched her carefully, the way mothers do. "You look tired," her mother said gently. Mara smiled. "Just work." Her mother stirred her tea slowly. "You've always been strong," she said. "But strength doesn't mean you don't need rest or answers." The words lingered. For a moment, Mara considered telling her everything. The heaviness, the confusion, the quiet sadness she couldn't name. But the habit kicked in. "I'm okay," she said instead. Her mother didn't argue. She just reached across the table and squeezed Mara's hand. That night, back in her apartment, Mara sat on the edge of her bed and finally admitted the truth, not out loud, but deep within herself. "I'm tired of pretending I'm fine." She didn't need a dramatic rescue. She didn't need a miracle. She needed honesty, because pretending was exhausting her more than life itself. And deep down, something whispered that God was not offended by her weariness. He was waiting for her to stop hiding it. The first tear surprised her. It fell without warning, landing on her keyboard in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Mara froze. She wasn't sad. She wasn't hurt. Nothing had happened. And yet, there it was. She quickly brushed it away, glanced around the office, and forced herself to refocus. No one noticed. No one ever did. But something inside her shifted. The following days felt heavier. She started waking up already tired. Coffee stopped helping. Sleep came, but rest didn't. Small things irritated her: the sound of notifications, unfinished conversations, people asking for just one more thing. Her patience, once endless, began to thin. She caught herself snapping at a colleague, then apologizing immediately. She forgot a minor task, nothing serious, but enough to shake her confidence. "Mistakes aren't like you," she told herself. Get it together. But the truth was harder to admit. She was running on empty. One evening, 3 weeks later, she missed a call from her sister. Then another. And another. When she finally called back, her sister's voice was concerned. Are you okay? You've been distant. Mara leaned against the kitchen counter, staring at the sink. I'm fine, she said automatically. Silence on the other end. Mara, her sister said gently, you don't sound fine. The words pierced deeper than she expected. I don't know what's wrong with me, Mara whispered. I shouldn't feel like this. Her sister didn't rush to fix it. She just listened. And for the first time in weeks, Mara let herself cry quietly, carefully, like someone afraid of making noise. That night, after the call ended, Mara sat on the floor of her bedroom, knees pulled to her chest. She hadn't cried like this in years. Not loud sobs, just steady tears, dripping down as she stared at the wall. I don't know what I'm doing, she whispered. The room was silent. No answers came. No sudden peace washed over her. Just honesty and exhaustion. The next morning, she called in sick. The word felt foreign in her mouth. I need a day, she told her manager, voice steady despite the knot in her chest. When the call ended, she sat in her robe, unsure what to do with the unexpected stillness. The days stretched before her empty, quiet, unplanned. She didn't clean. She didn't scroll. She didn't distract herself. She sat by the window and watched the world move without her. And for the first time, she realized something unsettling. Life keeps going. Even when I stop performing. Around midday, she opened her Bible, not with intention, not with expectation, but out of habit. It fell open to a page she didn't remember marking. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Matthew 11:28, her breath caught. Weary, burdened. Those words didn't accuse her, they named her. She read the verse again. Slower this time. Tears blurred the page. I am tired, she whispered, not in defeat, but in truth. For the first time in a long while, her prayer wasn't polished. It wasn't structured. It wasn't strong. God, I don't know what I need. I just know I can't keep going like this. She waited. Stillness filled the room, not empty, but gentle. And in that quiet, she didn't hear a voice, but she felt something unfamiliar yet comforting. Permission. Permission to rest. Permission to feel. Permission to stop pretending. By evening, nothing in her life had changed. Her job was still there. Her questions still unanswered. Her future still unclear. But something inside her had softened. She didn't fix her life that day. She simply stopped lying to herself. And sometimes, that's the bravest step toward healing. The morning after her day off, Mara returned to work quieter than usual. Not weaker, not broken, just more aware. No one had asked her to be perfect, yet somehow she always was. At lunch, she sat alone in the small park behind the building, watching people rush past with phones pressed to their ears. She realized something unsettling. Everyone looked busy. Everyone looked important. Everyone looked tired. And yet, she felt alone in her exhaustion. Why does it feel like I'm the only one struggling? She wondered. Then the truth surfaced sharp and uncomfortable, because she never let anyone see it. That afternoon, her manager praised her work during a team meeting. Mara is always reliable, he said. We can count on her. The room nodded in agreement. She smiled politely. But inside, something twisted. Reliable had slowly become indispensable, and indispensable had quietly become trapped. If she ever slowed down, if she ever said no, who would she be then? That evening she met her friend Leah for dinner. Leah studied her over the rim of her glass. You've changed, Leah said. Mara shrugged. In a good way or bad? In an honest way. That answer startled her. They ate for a while in comfortable silence before Mara spoke again. I feel like I'm failing, she admitted, but I don't know at what. Leah nodded slowly. Let me ask you something. Who taught you that you have to carry everything alone. The question landed hard. Mara opened her mouth, then closed it. She didn't have an answer. That night, she journaled for the first time in years. Not pretty sentences, not inspirational quotes, just raw words spilling onto paper. I'm tired of being strong. I'm scared of disappointing people. I don't know how to rest without guilt. She paused, pen hovering. Then she wrote the sentence that made her chest tighten. I don't know who I am without expectations. Her thoughts drifted back to childhood. Praise for being mature, admiration for handling things well, pride in never needing help. Strength had been rewarded early. Dependence had not. Without realizing it, she had learned a dangerous lesson. Love came with performance. Acceptance came with usefulness. Later, as she lay in bed, she remembered another scripture. She reached for her Bible again, flipping pages slowly. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Matthew 11:30 light. She almost laughed. Her burden felt anything but light, and yet, the verse didn't say life would be easy, it said his burden was different. Maybe the heaviness she carried wasn't a holy hole? Maybe it was self. A quiet realization settled over her. Some expectations weren't given by God. They were inherited from fear, people-pleasing, and survival. And God had never asked her to carry those. Tears slid down her temples as she whispered, I don't know how to put them down. But this time, she didn't feel ashamed of that confession. As sleep finally found her, one thought stayed with her. If I've been carrying what isn't mine, then healing might begin by learning how to let go. And that idea, terrifying and freeing all at once, followed her into the dark. The fear didn't announce itself loudly. It crept in quietly between tasks, during pauses in the silence that followed accomplishment. Mara noticed it first on a Saturday morning. No alarms, no deadlines, no urgent messages waiting for her attention. Just time, and instead of peace, anxiety bloomed. She stood in her kitchen, coffee growing cold in her hands, unsure what to do next. The thought surprised her. Why does rest feel so uncomfortable? She tried reading, scrolling, cleaning. Nothing settled her. Without something to accomplish, she felt unnecessary. Later that afternoon, she visited her mother. They sat on the couch, old family photos spread across the table. Her mother laughed softly, pointing at a picture of Mara at 8 years old. You were always the strong one, she said fondly. You never caused trouble. The words were meant as praise, but Mara felt something crack open. Strong. Never caused trouble, even then. On her drive home, memories surfaced, moments she had filed away without examining. Times she swallowed tears so others wouldn't worry. Times she took responsibility that wasn't hers. Times she became dependable before she learned how to be held. Strength had been her shield, but shields are heavy when you never put them down. That evening, the fear finally found its voice. If I stop being strong, will anyone stay? The question echoed in the quiet apartment. She sank onto the floor, back against the couch, knees pulled to her chest. For the first time, she let herself name it. She wasn't afraid of failing. She was afraid of being ordinary, afraid of being unseen without her achievements, afraid of being loved without earning it. Her phone buzzed. A message from Leah. Thinking of you. Want to talk? Mara stared at the screen. Her instinct was to say she was fine. She always was. Instead, she typed slowly, I don't think I know how. Leah responded almost immediately. That's okay. You don't have to. The simplicity of the reply made her eyes sting. That night, Mara opened her Bible again, not searching, just flipping. Her eyes landed on a familiar verse, one she had heard many times but never truly received. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Psalm 46:1, refuge, not reward, not applause, not performance, refuge, a place you run to, not something you earn. She whispered, I don't know how to be weak. And for the first time, she sensed an answer forming, not in words, but in peace. You don't have to know. You just have to come. The fear didn't vanish, but it loosened its grip. As she lay in bed, she realized something profound. Her strength had protected her, but it had also isolated her. And healing would require something far braver than endurance. It would require surrender. Outside, the city hummed softly. Inside, Mara breathed slow, intentional, allowing the unfamiliar feeling of being held rather than holding everything together. The fear was still there, but it no longer owned her. Vulnerability didn't arrive as courage. It arrived as exhaustion. Mara woke up on Monday feeling heavier than usual, as if the armor she had worn all her life had finally grown too heavy to lift. She went through the motions, shower, dress, commute, but something inside her had changed. She wasn't fighting anymore. At work, she sat through meetings she usually led with confidence. This time, she listened more than she spoke. Not because she had nothing to say, but because she was tired of proving she deserved space. When her manager asked if she could take on an additional project, the word yes hovered on her tongue. It always did. But today, something else came out. "I can't," she said quietly. "Not right now." The room went still. No one scolded her. No one withdrew approval. The world didn't collapse. Later that afternoon, she felt the familiar anxiety rise. The fear that she had disappointed someone. But it was softer now. Less convincing, like a voice that had lost authority. That evening, she met Leah for dinner. They sat across from each other in a small cafe, candles flickering between them. "So," Leah said gently, "what's really going on?" Mara opened her mouth, then closed it again. This was the moment she usually joked her way out of. Instead, "I don't know who I am when I'm not being useful," she admitted. The words trembled, but they stood. Leah didn't interrupt, didn't fix. She simply nodded. "That sounds lonely." And just like that, Mara felt seen. The conversation spilled over into stories Mara had never shared. The pressure to be perfect. The fear of becoming invisible. The belief that love was conditional. As she spoke, she realized something startling. Her story didn't shrink her. It connected her. On her walk home, she noticed how the city lights reflected off puddles in the street, broken images, still beautiful. She thought about how much energy she had spent trying to appear whole. Maybe brokenness wasn't the enemy. Maybe hiding was. That night, she prayed differently. Not with polished words or quiet control, but honestly, "God," she whispered, "I don't want to perform anymore. I want to be known." The silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt attentive. Her Bible lay open beside her, and her eyes fell on another verse, this one stopping her breath. "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Dois Corinthians, 12:9, weakness, not erased, not punished, redeemed. Tears came not from pain, but relief. If God could work through weakness, then she didn't have to hide anymore. She didn't have to earn love. She could receive it. The next morning, Mara showed up differently. Not louder, not smaller, just heao. And something remarkable happened. People leaned in. The hardest battles don't begin in the present. They begin in memory. Mara discovered this on a quiet Sunday afternoon while sorting through an old box she'd carried from apartment to apartment for years. Inside were journals, cards, notes scribbled in handwriting she barely recognized anymore. Her past, preserved in ink. She opened one of the journals at random. "Be strong. Don't cry. Handle it yourself." Page after page echoed the same message. Not prayers. Instructions. She realized then that many of the rules she lived by had never been spoken out loud. They were absorbed. From raised eyebrows when she expressed emotion. From praise that followed self-sacrifice. From silence when she needed comfort. She had mistaken survival for identity. Later that evening, she called her sister something she hadn't done in months. They talked about childhood, about expectations, about how different they had learned to cope. "You always took care of everyone," her sister said softly, "even when you were hurting." Mara swallowed. She had thought no one noticed. After the call, she sat alone, wrestling with a painful truth. Some of the voices guiding her decisions weren't God's voice at all. They were echoes of fear. Fear dressed up as wisdom. She thought of how often she had mistaken pressure for purpose, how many times she had said yes out of guilt, not calling, how often she had believed that God's will was heavy, exhausting, and joyless. But Scripture told a different story. She opened her Bible and read slowly, deliberately, for God is not a God of confusion, but of peace. 1 Corinthians 14:33, peace. Not anxiety, not panic, not constant proving. The realization unsettled her. If God wasn't the source of her relentless striving, then who was? And why had she listened for so long? That night, Mara made a list, not of goals, but of voices, things she believed about herself, rules she lived by, expectations she carried. Then, one by one, she asked a brave question. Did God actually say this? Most of the answers were no. She felt grief for the years spent chasing approval, but also hopey, because if these beliefs were learned, they could be unlearned. Before bed, she prayed again, this time with intention. God, help me recognize your voice above all others. The response came quietly, steadily, like truth settling into place. My sheep know my voice. She had heard it before, she had just been distracted. That night, Mara slept deeply. Not because everything was fixed, but because something was clarified. She didn't need to be stronger. She needed to be led. Peace felt unfamiliar. Not wrong, just unused. Mara noticed it the moment she stopped rushing. On Monday morning, she didn't reach for her phone immediately. No emails. No news. No comparison. She sat at the edge of her bed and breathed. It felt almost rebellious. Throughout the day, she began to notice how often pressure disguised itself as urgency. The quick yes, the over-explaining, the need to respond instantly. This time, she paused, not out of defiance, but discernment. At lunch, a colleague asked her why she seemed different. Calmer, he said. Did something change? Mara smiled. I'm listening better, she replied. She didn't elaborate. Some transformations are too sacred to explain prematurely. That evening she declined an invitation she would normally accept out of obligation. Guilt tried to rise, it always did. But instead of obeying it, she prayed, and to her surprise, the peace stayed. She opened her Bible later, reading slowly, not searching for answers, just presence. Her eyes landed on another verse that felt like confirmation. You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast, because they trust in you. Isaiah 26. Trust. Not control, not anticipation, not fear. Trust. The next few days tested her resolve. A project ran late. A misunderstanding arose. An old habit of overfunctioning knocked at the door. But each time she asked herself the same question. Does this require faith or fear? The answer guided her. One afternoon, she took a long walk through the park. No headphones. No agenda. Just stillness. She realized how long it had been since she allowed herself to exist without performing. The sky stretched wide above her. Unrushed, unbothered. She remembered something her grandmother used to say. If God wanted you to hurry, he would have made you faster. Mara laughed softly. Maybe rest wasn't laziness. Maybe it was obedience. That night, she journaled again, but this time, the pages looked different. Not rules, not resolutions, just reflections. Gratitude replaced striving, presence replaced pressure. As she closed the journal, a gentle truth settled into her heart. Peace wasn't something she needed to chase. It was something she needed to protect. And protecting it meant trusting God more than her instincts. Growth has a way of being tested, not immediately, but intentionally. Mara learned this on a Thursday evening when her phone lit up with a name she hadn't seen in years. Ethan. Her stomach tightened before her mind caught up. They hadn't spoken since the season when her life revolved around proving she was enough for him, for everyone. She stared at the screen as it buzzed once, then stopped. Silence returned, but something had already been stirred. Later that night, Curiosity whispered. What if he's changed? What if this is closure? She recognized the voice. It sounded reasonable, it always did. The next morning, another message came. Hey Mara, I've been thinking about you. Would love to catch up. Simple. Harmless. Except it wasn't. Not really. Mara sat at her desk, heart racing, not from excitement, but familiarity. This was the door she used to walk through whenever validation knocked. She knew the pattern well. Hope, effort, exhaustion. She excused herself and stepped outside. The air was cool, grounding. She whispered a prayer she had learned recently. God, help me hear you louder than my feelings. A memory surfaced, the nights she had waited for his attention. The times she adjusted herself to be easier to love, the silence that followed her vulnerability. She had called it patience. It had been neglect. Her Bible verse from earlier in the week returned to her mind. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Proverbs 4:23. Guard, not avoid. Not fear. Guard. She realized something painful but freeing. Not every familiar door was meant to be reopened. Some were meant to remind her how far she'd come. Ethan messaged again. No pressure. Just thought I'd reach out. The words tugged at her old self, the one who felt chosen when noticed. But she wasn't her old self anymore. Mara typed slowly, intentionally. I hope you're well. I'm in a season of protecting my peace. I won't be reconnecting, but I wish you the best. She hesitated, then pressed send. Her hands trembled not from fear, from courage. She waited for regret to flood in. It didn't. Instead, peace settled deeper than before. The kind that doesn't need reassurance. That night, she thanked God, not for removing temptation, but for strengthening discernment. She understood now. Healing doesn't mean the past disappears. It means it no longer controls you. Purpose used to feel heavy to Mara, like something she had to earn, maintain, and constantly justify. Now, it felt different, lighter. The shift began subtly. A conversation here, a moment of honesty there. Women started opening up to her, not because she tried to lead, but because she listened. One afternoon, after a small group meeting, she almost skipped. A woman lingered behind. I don't know why, she said nervously, but when you talked about learning to rest, it felt like you were telling my story. Mara felt her chest tighten, not with pride, but recognition.